reflections. Less reflections. Duck down, I'm just almost in the shade here. Whew. Yeah, about the 90s today, I think, is what the forecast said, depending on which one I saw. Bug just fell out of my hat and landed in my eye. That's not good. Anyway. Oh, hang on. Oh, ow, that hurts. Oh, I see what's going on. The bike keeps waking up because the solar is coming in. I guess that doesn't matter. The battery's disconnected, and I look over and the Analyst was waking up again. One of these days I'm going to do a refresh on what the actual current setup on the bike is now, because it's different. I should do that on the website too, but I haven't. Well, it's awkward with the phone. I hate doing website stuff just on the phone. So I got to figure out how to do that. So yeah, I had a couple comments on the last video, and I was like, yeah, I just realized that it's confused, or I'm confused. Nobody knows what the current setup is right now. So the motor that I had for 3 days on the sun trip is I think it's rated at 1500 watts. It's the funniest thing because oh, hang on, can we do this? Beep, beep. Yeah, rough on the backlighting. Anyway, the motor is rated at 1500 watts, which I don't really need, but it sure is nice to have it. And if I do need it, like intermittently, I could just crank it up really short, blow up a hill if I need to or something like that, and then turn it back down again. So just because it's 1500 watts doesn't mean I have to use it all. I'm quite often riding 300 or 500 watts, and it should last 3 times as long then. I keep seeing the hay trucks, and I noticed coming into town there was a lot more hay on the road than I'd seen otherwise, and I was starting to think I should look to see where they're coming out, because odds are when they're just hitting the highway they're going to lose all the loose stuff, and then they would lose less. So the last couple trucks that went by me, they were still throwing a lot of hay. This is where they're coming from. So yeah, I've been seeing them all day. They're going down towards Soap Lake. Actually, yeah, they were going on the Soap Lake Road, I think. So they're coming from up here. Okay. Hopefully they don't run all night. That'd be kind of loud. That's okay. Anyway, yeah, the motor, it's from Grin Cycles up in Canada. It's the 1500 watt all axle e-motor, and the idea is instead of it having a fixed motor shaft going through it, it's got a hole going through it, and then, like for instance, for what I'm doing, I can just run my quick release axle through it, and then we're done. All right. It still has the torque arm, like a lot of motors have, which it's, for the bigger motors you need a torque arm. For my little 250 I didn't. Okay, so that's that. So if you're curious, look up Grin Cycles, which I think is ebikes.ca. They're up in Canada. It's one of their own designed motors, and it's pretty beefy. From what I've heard, the motor is bulletproof. It was just my bad luck that I blew up the controller on the 3rd day last time. Yeah. Anyway, so that was more of a mistake on settings than anything. So just kind of I'll take responsibility, or we're kind of sharing responsibility between myself and the dealer. We got a little bit too much power, and it was not on motor driving, it was on the regen is where the problem was. We overcooked it. So okay, now we know, so a little bit more conservative now. And I'm using the Cycle Analyst, which is the kind of the control interface. That's how you can see what the motor controller is doing. And I think it's called the phase runner. There's also a Franken runner. And what happened is with the chip shortage, they can't get the parts they need to make the phase runner anymore. And so they're making what they call the Franken runner, which is very similar, but it's using a substituted chip. But this one supposedly is the phase runner, but I'm not 100% sure about that now, because when it got RMA'd, I don't really know if the phase runner that I sent back is the one I got, but it looked like it had very similar settings, so it might be the one. I didn't actually mark it, so I'm not really sure. All right, so the cycle analyst is how you set things up as far as controlling it day to day, and the phase runner is the actual motor controller that drives the motor directly, I guess would be the way to say it. And then the two batteries that I now have on, where are we at? I can't see. There's a bracket off the back of the seat post is what I got the batteries on. That's the two batteries that the other Sun Trippers got for me at the bike shop, and they basically were actually free batteries, so I don't think anybody paid anything for them. They just got given to us. So they're 48 volt batteries, maximum charge is 53. I think they're about 14 amp hours each, and I got two of them in parallel. They're just permanently, well, I've got a Y adapter, so I could separate them, but I typically run them as one battery. And with the solar going into it in the peak part of the day, I'm actually charging the battery as I'm riding, and then today towards evening I was running out of power because I kept going up and down rolly hills, and I was trying to carry too much speed, and I kind of, in the middle of the day, you get all happy, zooming along, and then at the end of the day you realize, oh right, I'm running out of power, and now the sun is getting lower. So I was learning to be a little more conservative there. And the cool thing for today, I finally plugged in the wire for the it's called a shunt that is able to measure current, and this one is plugged in between the solar and the batteries, and so I can see how many watts are coming in real time, which is super cool, because before that, if I got off and looked where the charge controller is, I could see a number there, but I can't see it while I'm riding. So today what I was able to do, since it was close to the end of the day, I was able to look at how many watts were coming in, and let's say I had about 95 watts out of two panels that were sitting flat when the sun is coming at an angle. I thought that's about right, and I kind of confirmed it by getting off and looking, and it was say 45 volts and 2.3 amps at the controller, at the charge controller. Okay, so that's almost 95 watts, 100 watts, something like that. Watts times volts is, or no, amps times volts is watts, I think. Don't ever listen to me for electrical advice, so I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, with that, what I was able to do is I was like, okay, I got 95 coming in, and then I put the motor, I've got 3 power profiles that I set up, so it's like I've got a 300 watt profile, a 500 watt profile, and a 900 watt profile. I typically cruise on 300, and if I'm going up and down hills, I'll put it on 500 just to give me a little more kick going up the hill. So since I was running out of power, I put it back in 300, and then on the throttle, I've got a cruise control setting that I enabled. That's part of the Cycle Analyst software. You can go in and turn it on, and so what it is it's either off, or you hold the throttle setting for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, or something like that. So what I was able to do is hold the throttle at about 145 watts, for instance, and you just kind of hold it really gentle at a certain, just try to hold it still while you're riding, and after about 3 seconds the little indicator will flash, so you know the cruise control is on. So I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, I can never quite hit 95, but I was able to hit 145. Okay, so the motor is using 45, but 95 is coming in, and so I'm only using, say, 50 watts out of the battery then. Okay, and it's, kind of simple math when you look at it like that. So I'm like, okay, all I have to do is, I would eventually run out of power, but it's using less power from the battery than if I didn't have the solar coming in at all, right? So by doing it that way, I could actually see what my power budget was in real time. And what was funny is I had made this long extension cable, because the charge controller is on the trailer. I'm pointing, but you can't see that. So I made a cable that goes all the way from the front of the bike back to the trailer. And then I realized, well, the power comes through the trailer, through the wiring harness that I had made before, and the wire that I put the shunt on could be on the bike up by the battery, because it just, it doesn't matter where in the chain it's plugged in. So I'm like, oh, that was stupid. So now I've got an extra 5 feet of wire I don't need anymore, so I might cut that out again. Right now it's all wadded up. I just was testing it to make sure it worked. So it was cool. So it's just kind of a neat tool that I can say, all right, how much actual watts do I have coming in? And then I could adjust my throttle to not use as much battery in real time. And a couple of hills were a little bit steeper, so I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and kick it up to 300 watts to get up the hill, and then coming down the hill, I coasted. So then I used 0 watts. And on the level, I kept it just as low as I possibly could, and this was the last 10 miles to the campsite. And I thought, well, okay, as long as I don't actually run out of power or knock the battery offline or something like that, because then I'd have to sit there for half an hour and wait for the battery to charge enough to wake up again. So I was trying not to do that. So yeah, it's just kind of a cool thing. But a few of the people have been like asking about, could you get a regular e-bike? And it's kind of, yes, sometimes. It's the best I can say, because every e-bike is different. The question becomes, for instance, with the power shunt coming off of the solar, you really need the cycle analyst to see that. Now, if you don't care about reading that number, you don't need the cycle analyst to see that. Most e-bikes have their own controller, like the cycle analyst and like the phase runner. So the phase runner is just a black box that directly drives the motor, and the cycle analyst is your interface to the phase runner. Okay, and it's it literally gives you just like page after page after page of information. So you can figure out your watt hours per mile is a question that I haven't really looked at too hard yet. But if you start looking at it, you can say, all right, if I know I can go this many watt hours per mile, then I could size my battery to do a 100-mile ride if that's all I was going to do. Now for me, it's less important because every day I do a different ride, right? I mean, I'm riding a different road every day, so I don't really care, what my actual raw numbers are, as long as I have enough to get there. And if I don't, I just slow down or pedal more or stop and wait for the battery to charge up, or So I'm just kind of looking. It's like, yeah, I can do 50 miles in a day most days, then that's good enough. If I know I'm going up a pretty big hill, actually it was a decent hill the first day coming out of Wenatchee, and I still made 45 miles or something like that. Okay. I guess, yeah, so what I was meaning to say was, with a commercially made e-bike, you can't use the cycle analyst because you'd have to remove the system that they gave you, and then that would void the warranty. And there's a lot of things that the cycle analyst is really neat for having. It gives you a really low-level control over a whole bunch of settings. The all-axle motor that I have has a temperature sensor in it, and the cycle analyst can automatically reduce power when the motor starts getting too hot. I've been seeing that the last couple days. And it just automatically rolls back the power to keep the temperature from going too high. So if you really kept trying to push it, it would just eventually stop. But in the meantime, as it slows down, you realize that you're getting too hot, and then you can make some adjustments. You could, for instance, just shift down on the gears and pedal harder to keep the motor from overheating. Would help, or if you're just too tired, pull off and stop for a few minutes and let it cool off, which is fine. But then at least you don't fry the motor, right? So, yeah. Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And then, like a really nice commercially made e-bike, most of the wires are tucked in, which makes them look really nice, but then you can't go changing things. I got to ride a few nice e-bikes yesterday that were, all very nicely made and everything, and the wires are tucked in, and they had a lot of the cool settings on them, so you wouldn't necessarily want to hack it too much. But for instance, I've got a choice now. I can put a torque sensor on it or a cadence sensor for the pedal assist. I've got the parts for the torque sensor, I just didn't put them on yet. And I don't think I will between here and home, because I just want to get home, and then when I'm home, I can take some downtime and upgrade again. But one of the bikes I rode did have a torque sensor on it, and man, is that nice. It is just completely seamless. You just start pedaling and the motor kicks in without you hitting the throttle or anything. It's just automatic, and you don't even feel it. You know, if you pedal soft, it goes soft. If you pedal hard, the motor kicks in hard. It just completely reads how hard you're pedaling. Plus, you can dial the power assist up or down on it. So it is pretty cool. And some of those bikes have the mid-drive motor, so the motor is kind of attached to the front pedals, and then the torque goes through the same chain to the motor, or to the wheel. So as you shift the rear derailleur, the motor is also able to take advantage of you shifting, which is a pretty clever option. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Every bike has its own advantage, so you know, you're kind of like, well, which way do you want to go? One thing I could say is those bikes, they typically have the battery on the down tube and the mid-drive at the pedals, and so all of the weight is right in the middle of the bike, so you don't have heavy front wheel and heavy back wheel, right? Or you can put the motor in the back wheel or put the motor in the front wheel. You know, in my case, I got the battery on the cargo rack above the back wheel. Maybe not ideal. Another hay truck coming back empty, so I'm definitely where they're coming from. Anyway, so lots of pros and cons. I'm not here to sell anybody on anything. If you got a e-bike that you like, you know, good, enjoy it. And I can't imagine 1 out of a million people are ever going to put a solar panel on the back of their bike. So it literally is probably less than 1 in a million, honestly, because, well, like another guy I met today, the place where that statue was of the Native American man and woman with the big eagle wings, right? So I come back and here's a guy on an e-bike looking at my setup, and we get talking, and you know, he was asking a little bit, and he's like, well, he had a pretty good idea how far he wants to go, and so he's just going to have a second battery, and then he'll ride on one battery out, switch batteries, ride back, and then when he gets home, plug them in and charge them. Perfect, you know. Eliminate the solar panels, the trailer, all the bulkiness, all the weirdness, all the connections. Simple, you know. Yeah, 100%. Don't mess around with it. Just do it and be done. It's just when you decide you're going to go further than what you can do on a battery, you know. Another guy I met on the road down in California, he had, I think it was a Bosch bike, and the first time I saw him, I think he just had one battery. He was kind of testing the waters, and then the second time I saw him, he was in a different campsite, and he had, I think, 3 batteries. And what he would do is when he was able to charge, he would charge them all up, and he was going from campsite to campsite and riding the back roads, fire roads, forestry roads, that kind of stuff in the backcountry in California, and then coming down to town to restock and hitting campsites in between. All right. So a lot of the campsites had somewhere that you could plug in. So if it was in the bathroom, you just take your battery and your charger and you plug it in. Okay. Easy, right? So by doing it that way, you know, he wasn't going to drag a trailer and solar panels everywhere, but he just knew that eventually he'd find a place to plug in, and if not, he still had a really nice pedal bike that he could pedal, okay, because he wasn't loaded as heavy as I am, right? Which is a definite goal that I'm working towards. So yeah, and that's one of the other things I'm looking at, is get home in a fairly direct route from here, spend some time at home, do some fixing, some rebuilding, and it's like I'm carrying the batteries I'm using, the first set of batteries that got me to California, plus 2 of the spare batteries still, because I couldn't mail them home, right? Yeah, that's just dead weight, literally. But they're worth money, but I can't mail them home, and I don't want to just get rid of them. You know, if I could find somebody that wanted to buy them, I probably would. But at the same time, they have value to me, so I'm not going to, drop the price too much, because I'll use them. So, yeah. But I don't need them with me all the time. Anywho, I think that's the important bit. So To me, well, two things. The way I started out, I didn't have $5,000 for a really nice e-bike or $2,000. Now I have invested over $2,000. All right, because I had the original $350 worth of batteries that I bought. All the Harbor Freight batteries were about $350. Plus, I had another $350 in the first pack I tried to build that never worked right. The one that I had trouble with spot welding. And now I've got 4 sets of batteries that were free, but they would be worth, I probably could be $1,000 worth of batteries sitting there. Yeah, because I got 4 of them. They're at least $250 each, so that's $1,000. The bike was over $700, and then I put $1,500 into the new motor. All right. So if I had spent the same money on a commercial bike, but I didn't have $2,000 when I left the ranch. Okay, so that's, But I also learned a lot in the process. I had a lot better idea what I wanted when I was able to do the upgrade. Okay. And all of the parts I have, I can move to the next bike or trike if I want to. So I could take that motor and the motor controller and the cycle analyst and the batteries, respoke that motor onto a different wheel or whatever, put it on a trike, and I just move all of my parts over. If I bought a nice commercial e-bike, most of those parts would be pretty much built into the bike or not transferable easily. So if I, randomly, if I broke a frame, which is pretty unlikely, but if something like that happened, those parts are stuck on that bike and you can't always just unplug them and move them over. So I prefer that kind of a mentality, but yeah, I'm not going to sell anybody unless you want to buy something. I actually can. Ryan, the guy I bought the parts through, said, yeah, if you know anybody that wants anything, we'll work a deal. So I'm like, all right. So I give you a recommendation. I think he gives me a 10% commission or something like that. But, for the 1 out of a million of you guys that wants to buy the same stuff I've got, that's an option. Oh, and if you need a battery charger, that's one I could mention. The Satiator from Grin Cycles, and I have no idea how you spell that. But if you look for battery chargers on their website, that's a really neat charger because it's got a changeable end for the battery, so you can make your own custom pigtails, or there is a set of pigtails you can get for your battery. Odds are any battery you have, they have an adapter for it, and you can go in and set custom profiles. And so if you had 3 different e-bikes, you could have 3 different profiles, and so you just choose the right one, plug the battery in, and charge it. And you could fast charge it or slow charge it depending on how much time you had. Okay, so that's a pretty neat option. So instead of having one battery for each bike or one battery charger for each bike. Oh, and that's the last point I should say. If I, later on when I have a second e-bike, because I've got the original Bafang motors still, so I could set up a ranch bike that I don't take on the road. I just use it around the ranch, or I just take it to the post office, but not long distance, right? Yeah, so I could build a system around all of the parts I have because I've got 4 motors with wheels, plus 2 spare motors, and at least 1 more motor controller, and all these batteries, and all these batteries would work with the Bafang because I was using them, right? So I could switch parts back and forth anytime I wanted to. So I could build a new bike around a single battery pack because I don't need dual batteries, just to go check my mail or something like that. And I'm not going to use solar on the ranch. I don't want to go bouncing down that road with dragging this trailer with the solar panels. So then I could look at, do I want to make one big battery with just enough range to go get mail, and that's all it needs. And then the other one is to go get groceries or to go hit the dollar store. That's a 50-mile one-way ride with a pretty good hill. Okay, so I could make a custom battery pack just for one specific use. Okay, so I probably will. So by keeping it open architecture like that, I have a lot of choices that I couldn't necessarily do, if I had a locked-in system, I guess is the way to look at it. Anyway, didn't mean to go off on that, but there it is. So anybody that's curious, that's my answer. 25 minutes, free advice. Anyway, I am in, I don't know where I am. I can't look. I'll flash it up on the screen. I'll do a screenshot later. So I got a pretty good ride. I think I've still got at least a day's ride before I get to Spokane. And so what I'll probably do is camp short of Spokane. I might look for another RV park because this is working out pretty good. This only cost me 20 bucks. And it has access to free showers and a plug-in. So, you know, that's the best ever, because if I went for a motel, it'll cost me 60 bucks or more. I'd have to unload the bike, get it into the room. You know, this is easier to camp, so I'll look at RV parks more as I go. I was trying really hard in the beginning not to use plug-ins at all, and I kind of proved that I can do that. But the new motor it can use more power, and so I'm looking at, well, I guess I'll have to match it to the terrain. I haven't yet done a 100-mile day, and I want to see if I can, but I'm not sure if I can with the amount of stuff I have on the trailer, so I might not be able to with that much stuff. I think if I got rid of some of the extra weight, I should be able to do 100-mile days. Okay. With the extra weight, I can't go very fast or very far and do it solar only. But I'm looking at now, it's like, well, I spent a lot of time taking video of little side attractions like the lake and stuff like that, which was nice. But I still want to make a certain amount of miles in a day. So by doing that and being able to plug in and charge once in a while, now I can extend my range. So, you know, it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm only doing solar. You know, I'm going to kind of change it up a little bit on the second half and do a little more experimenting. What was the other thing? Oh, one of the guy I talked to where that statue was at Soap Lake, his bike, he had a nice pannier rack and some side panniers, backpacks. Well, I always call them saddlebags, but the ones that actually clip onto the racks the way they're supposed to. So it didn't look very complicated, and what he said it wasn't very expensive, so I'll be looking at that. That comes down to, well, do you buy one at Amazon, which I can't do until I get home, or do you buy one at the bike shop, and then it's going to cost you twice as much, and that's pretty typical. So I don't know that I will on the way home, but maybe I'll take a look and see what they've got. So I'm kind of looking at, from here to home, what little improvements can I test to see if I like them. So putting the battery on the bike instead of on the trailer, that reduced my weight on the trailer quite a bit. If I can move, like the backpack with my sleeping bag and my clothes, if I can move that onto the bike off of the trailer, that would reduce the load on the trailer enormously. All right. It doesn't reduce the total load, but it changes where the load is, which would make the hitch last longer on the trailer, and also the tires on the trailer. All right, so less weight on the trailer. I know the bike can handle it, so I'll be looking at these little things and what kind of changes can I make. So yeah. Oh, one last thing that I was thinking of. The trailer porpoises a lot. That's just, there's just a little up and down thing. And that's because the axle is where it's supposed to be. It's just that I added 4 feet of extension onto the back of the trailer, right? So that's where the porpoising is coming from. It's the long tail. Unless I change solar panels, I'm going to have an 8-foot long trailer because that's how long the panels are. What I might do, though, if I redo the design on the trailer, I would like to shift the wheels back another 2 feet would be just about right. Then it wouldn't porpoise because the wheels would be behind the center of gravity. Right now they're very close, and so it does a lot of bouncing up and down. And I don't want to just put an enormous amount of weight on the front to give it nose weight, and I still have all the weight in the tail. So, and I've got spare wheels that I don't need. I'm just using the trailer to get them home. So yeah, there's some definite improvements here. So it is what it is, and I can't do any major changes with the setup I've got really right now. I'd kind of thought about redoing the trailer while I was at my dad's house, and the way it worked out, I got an opportunity to do some work while I was there, so I made some money. and everybody that I would have been trying to pester to do stuff was busy. I mean, I could have done the work myself, but my choice was if I'm there, I should do work and get paid $20 an hour so I can afford to get home, instead of sitting there in my brother's garage taking up space and getting in his way, and fixing my trailer. So that's, the more I thought about it, it just made sense not to mess with it too much. So yeah, so that's why that didn't happen. Could have, I did a little bit, but it wasn't really an effective use of time, really, when I thought about it. And then by the time I had the money to do something, then the parts I quit working the day I got the parts. So then I spent the next 2 days putting the bike back together, and here we are. So yeah, I could have probably spent another week there, but as much fun as it is staying at home, I'm going on the road. I was there for 2 weeks. That was a nice break. So anyway, yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and thanks to all the people I'm meeting on the road. And it's just fun, random people you start talking to. The rest stop people, like, oh, what is that? Or at the dry fall, somebody comes over. Is that your bike? What is all that? It's just kind of fun. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna just stop talking and drink water. I'm just parched. At least I got some shade now. So later. Bye.